In this video, I'd like to look back at the advice Adrian gave you about tackling question 3. You may recall he suggested that you leave question 3 until you've done question 4. And that's because it's worth 8 marks, which is a lot less than question 4, which is worth 20. So only spend 10 minutes on this question. The question will always have the same format. You'll be asked to look at the entire extract. You'll be told whether it's from the beginning or the ending of a short story, and your answer has to explore how the writer structures the text to interest the reader. You'll be given 3 bullet points that will prompt you to consider what the writer focuses on at the beginning, any changes of focus as the text develops, and any other structural features. So it's quite a challenging question, but Adrian suggested that in order to get as many of those 8 marks as you can, as quickly as you can, you might adopt a very useful, simple strategy, which is basically to think, well, what's going on at the beginning, the middle, and the end of the extract? To help you choose a particular element to consider, Adrian talked a little bit about the 5 W's. We'll have a look at these in more depth in a second. Where, what, who, when, and why. And also think about using some simple subject terminology where you can. So let's have a quick look at those 5 W's in more depth. This question's all about exploring focus, what the writer gets the reader to focus on. Does that change? Are there repetitions of some sort? So, where? Think, which aspect of the text are you going to look at? Is it the setting? Is it the action, the storyline? Has something happened, stopped, or continued? Is it who are we thinking about? The characters? Are we introduced to a new character? Or is it when? Are there changes in the timeline? Are there flashbacks, or do we get a glimpse of the future? So those 4 W's, you don't have to cover all of those. Choose 1 or 2 of those that may be linked, and then explore on a regular basis the effect on the reader. Why? That's the 5th W. If you've got time, you may like to consider any structural techniques that relate to the vocabulary, the sentence structures. But you've only got 10 minutes for this question, so you may want to focus on one of these 4 W's here. Where, what, who, and when. Adrian talked you through how you might be able to organize your thoughts around using a simple graphical structure like this, that along this axis you've got the beginning, the opening, you've got the middle, and then the closing, the end. And then here along this axis you may just want to quickly plot the particular element that you've considered. In this, in the example Adrian took you through in the workshop, he looked at the setting, how the story starts off by the river, with the character being quite unsettled. The setting changes in the middle. There's a slightly calmer tone when the character goes home, but there's still a bit of an unsettled tone there, some tension. And then at the end of the extract, we see that the tension has intensified, and the extract ends with that very striking image about being stung by nettles. So that little graphical structure could be a useful way to organize your thoughts. You will then have to write up your ideas, and we've got here a sample paragraph which illustrates some of the key points that you should consider. Making reference to the opening of the short story, setting the scene, thinking about the setting. We've got an embedded quote here, something was wrong, and thinking about the impact on the reader in terms of the use of some adjectives like still, silent, staring, watching to create a tense grey atmosphere. There's a change in the setting. As the text develops, the setting changes. The character goes home, but the tense tone is still continued. And we've got some other embedded quotes here. So thinking about the change of focus in terms of the setting, but how that links to character and plot development as well. So whilst we may think about the beginning, the middle and the end, you may not have time to cover all of those, and just focusing on just 2 of those elements would be fine and should give you sufficient material to get 4, 5 or 6 marks, if not all of them. If you did want to look at more sophisticated structural techniques, it could be that you might look at the narrative perspective, whether it was first or third person. Again, whether the focus moves from inside to outside, from an individual to a group. Again, this idea of moving from an external description to the inner thoughts of a character. Is there movement from dialogue to description? Does the text have a circular narrative in some way? And are there any images that recur, or symbols or ideas that are developed or that are repeated? We mentioned earlier in the video some terminology that might be useful. We've got some key terms there that we've used in this video, and then there are some verbs as well. Some of these key words like develop, build, repeat, introduce. If you want to practice using some of that terminology, on the Padlet board you'll find there's a link to an online activity, a quiz that will give you a little bit of practice in using some of those terms. So that's a quick look back at Adrian's advice about tackling question 3. It's worth 8 marks and you should spend 10 minutes on that question.